Started. Morning, everybody. Welcome. A really interesting couple of days and some interesting days that are to come. So we'll quickly give an update on the Public Procurement Bill and where that stands. And then I've got a couple of thoughts on beneficial ownership, just to give you an update on where that is standing. And I'm going to be looking out for a guest who might try and join us. I know that he's extremely busy. He's tied up today, but he's going to see if he can try and sneak out for a couple of minutes. But really, just to give you a quick update on the Public Procurement Bill. So lots has happened. Last week, the National Council of Provinces approved an amendment, significant number of amendments to the bill. That's the version of the bill that they received after the Finance Committee at National Assembly reviewed it, updated it, and sent it then for consideration by the NCOP. The NCOP went through a very rigorous process, far more rigorous and far more consultative than I had seen before. Certainly relative to the National Assembly's progress before that, and they submitted and approved a revised bill to National Assembly. Now that went back to the Finance Committee in National Assembly. Okay, so we've got these two houses in Parliament. One is the National Assembly, the other one is the National Council of Provinces. It went through the National Assembly. It was sent from National Assembly to NCOP. NCOP did some updates. Had NCOP not done anything to that version of the bill, it would have gone straight then to the presidency. But because there were a significant number, and I will try and share that with you shortly, because there were a significant number of changes that took place then at NCOP, it has to go back to National Assembly. And now the committee, the Finance Committee at National Assembly, considered the updates on Friday and Monday agreed that the version of the bill that they had received from the NCOP they're comfortable with. There were two political parties that are not comfortable with it, but the majority said they're comfortable with the bill as it stands and that it needs to go through to National Assembly. Now, what I understood from that discussion is National Assembly will tomorrow, 16th of May, consider and vote on the bill. They've done this before, but it was the previous version. It's been updated, so they have to do that again. The next step thereafter will be for it to be sent to the president. And if you have been following the news, you'll note that the president received the NHI bill from NCOP a couple of weeks ago, and the president said, the office of the president, this on Monday said that the president will be signing the NHI bill today, Wednesday, 15 May. If that is any indication on what will happen with the Public Procurement Bill, it's likely that if the National Assembly is going to approve it, which seems to be a given, if National Assembly approve it, then it is likely that the president will also approve it. Now, there are a couple of points to bear in mind around the president's approval of the bill. The one that I understand, and Professor Jonathan Klaaren is the person I invited to just briefly join us for a couple of minutes. If he's got some time, he will join us. He's probably one of the few people that have explained to me the level of detail and consideration and options that need to be explored by the president. And yeah, if it's not approved by the president before the 29th of May, It could still be approved later, but it will then have to go back to National Assembly, and there are a couple of other steps that will need to be passed. But it probably seems like the pressure will be on to approve that bill. What that means then is that by the end of May, it is very likely that South Africa will have a new Public Procurement Act. That act will replace the supply chain legislation, which is included in the PFMA. It will completely replace the supply chain legislation under the MFMA and will completely do away with the triple PFA as it stands. The big question is when? When will the effective date of that bill be? There is a lot of work that needs to be done by National Treasury to develop the regulations. There is a chance that some of the existing regulations might be carried forward under the new bill, and one of those is the public-private partnership set of regulations, which is undergoing an amendment or revision as we speak. That might be carried forward into under the new act, and there might be some other pieces of legislation as well that will do that. But it's likely that that will take some time before the regulations are approved. One of the big changes is that those regulations will need to be consulted on, will need to likely go through a NEDLAC process again. We will have an opportunity, as we've had with the Act, the bill, we will have an opportunity to comment on those. And so it is likely that it will take some time before it happens. I am not sure that there's anything in the bill right now that can be implemented without regulation. There is some thought that there might be aspects of the bill that could be made effective straight away. I'm not too sure about that. It is a very integrated bill. It might take some time before that is the case. But my view is, in my understanding of the bill, it's very unlikely that's going to happen. If there is anyone who would like to add to that update, you're welcome to. I see there are a couple of people that are also involved in the Procurement Reform Working Group. There are many of you online today who will certainly give some perspectives. So let me see if I can just quickly pull up the bill, and just to give you a sense of the extent of the changes that have been made. Any comments? I see Caroline is on. Hi, Caroline. Caroline James. Any comments on the bill and the status and where it is right now? Let me see if I can try and get this up. The bill is currently version D. Bill 18 version D, and version D is the updated version. I believe it is still version D because there were no changes that were recommended. I think there was a slight editorial fix that was suggested at the NCOP, but I don't think that there's going to be any change. And I think it will still be, if anything, it'll look very much as we have now with version D. So here it is. Let me see if I can try and share version D with you on the screen, not right now. There it is.
Sean?
Yes, hi. Good morning.
It's Lindiwe. It's Lindy.
Hello, Sis Lindiwe. Morning.
Morning, Sean. I just wanted you, maybe if you haven't done that yet, because I just joined a few minutes ago, are you able to share with the colleagues the costs that will be involved in implementation of the bill? Because remember, it was one of the the debates, and it was also the reason why from our side as the NRF, we obtained we had to go out to get a legal opinion, because initially they were saying that there are no costs going to be involved, but however, it was realized that actually that's not the case. This bill will have a cost in terms of the implementation. Maybe, I don't know, can you share with the colleagues?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Let me just quickly go to section 68, I think it is. Because I think that might be the one. Can you see that? I'm not sure if this is visible now. Section 68. So this is a section. Let's be sure that this is sharing. This is a section of the bill that was included by the NCOP, and I was intrigued to see that it went straight in. Just want to be sure that this is sharing. I was intrigued to see that this went straight into the Act itself. The Minister must, within 24 months after this Act is first published as an Act in the Gazette, review the implementation of this Act and the need for amendments to this Act. Consult the stakeholders, including NEDLAC, during the review, and within 27 months after this Act first published as an Act in the Gazette, make public a report on the review and submit it to Parliament. Now, Leo, I think this is within the context of a point that was strongly made by NCOP, that they do not buy the statement that there's no financial implication of this bill, which is a point that was made in the upfront notes. Let's see if we can just see that. If it's here, if it is here any longer. I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Let's just do a quick check. No, I don't think it's here any longer. There was a statement in the earlier version of the bill that said there will be no financial impact of this bill, and NCOP said that's not the case. Treasury also came back and conceded that yes, there will be an impact as far as the tribunals and the tribunal panels are concerned. But that's it. And I think this clause 68, Lindiwe, is the one that is trying to kind of manage that issue. That that's no longer 68 there. Let's just go back to it here. Yeah. Is trying to manage that issue, that there well may be some implementation issues as a result of this, the assumption that went in, and they're trying to anticipate that if there are problems, then the bill can be reviewed after 24 months after it's first published. That's all. I don't know of anything else. Certainly, I did listen on Monday to the deliberations at. I see your hand, Nicholas. I did listen on Monday's deliberations at the Finance Committee in National Assembly, and there was no real discussion on that point that I can recall. Nicholas, any thoughts? Welcome, Nicholas. Good morning.
Hi, Sean. Morning. National Treasury during the committee meeting said that they had updated the memorandum of objects to the bill. When it was published, obviously the second part of that publication was the memorandum of objects, but I don't have a copy of the new memorandum, and I don't know if anybody has it. If in there they have their forecasts for the costs and all the rest of it, one would hope that that is something the public could see in order to inform their comments. I think that the financial aspect is it's a critical part of a rational commenting process? I made the point in our previous discussion. How do we determine whether it's a good or bad idea to centralize procurement if we don't know the cost of that centralization and where that money is going to come from? Also, how do we know how it's going to affect individual municipalities that at the moment either are not meeting their social economic obligations or are on the threshold of barely meeting their obligations? How do we know what effect it is if we don't have the financials and where that money is going to come from? Is it all going to be paid by National, since this is National's project? There's a lot of questions that were never dealt with at the NCOP in that space of finances, which is problematic, I think.
There was a statement made by NCOP, but I didn't see any acknowledgement of that. Lungisi, I see your hand. I didn't see any real acknowledgement of that by Treasury, by the team from Treasury, on what it is that they're going to do in response to the comment, which was a very strong comment that was made by the chair of the committee. So yes, interesting. I've not seen that. All I have seen is what's been sent to some of the stakeholders, which is the bill and the changes to the bill. I've not seen the objects. Lungisi, welcome.
Morning, Sean, and also good morning to the colleagues. I know we'll be firing questions to you, assuming that probably the author, but you are not the author. It's just for the colleagues also to think about these things. I just went through the bill. If you go to page 37 has the schedules of amendments and repeals. And then if you look at item number 7, you're on the right one, Sean. It doesn't entirely repeal the PFMA, but they delete certain sections on the PFMA as indicated in there. And what I do not see being repealed in the bill is the Treasury Regulation 16A. I just want to know was that deliberate, or is it something that is likely to be done at a later stage? And your earlier statement, you indicated, if I heard you correctly, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that the bill completely repeals the PFMA. Those are just two of my comments so that maybe I have a proper understanding in terms of the repeals and the amendments. Does it only apply to these sections, or is the entire PFMA, including the Treasury Regulation 16A, repealed? Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. My understanding, I think we have had a discussion with Prof Kino, is that 16A and 16 are as a result of 38 and 51. And I think there might be some reference to 38 and 31, 38 and 51 in the regulations. I stand to be corrected, but I think that is the case. So as a result of these two, and please, my apologies if I did say that the PFMA will be repealed. It's just these 4 sections in the PFMA that will be repealed. The entire triple PFA will be repealed, just to be sure on that one. So it is just 38 and 51, and 38(1)(a)(3) says that a procurement and provisioning system that is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, cost effective must be implemented, and that's the only statement that then is removed from the PFMA. And I think 16A, if I'm not mistaken, and 16 drew its power from the 38(1)(a)(3) and 51(1)(a)(3). Those two, one being for departments and the other one being for public entities. I hope that helps. That's my understanding. If anyone wants to just clarify that, welcome to do that. Yeah, very, very interesting. And I found it quite interesting. I see Advocate Nsaluba's just made a point on section 68, which, by the way, was not there before. And Section 68 is referred to a couple of places later on in the bill to the old version 68, the old clause 68. It's no longer is 68. It's not the same clause. 68 is not the same clause as we had previously, but that is a really interesting one. So let's quickly go back and see where that is. There it is, 68. This is the version that we've got. So any other thoughts? I have invited some folk to join us next week for a more in-depth discussion on what this means for the public procurement community. We will have a much better understanding next week. Should National Assembly, I think it's a matter of just process now that National Assembly is probably going to approve this tomorrow. And let's have a look next week at more detail on what the exact implications are of this, and we'll try and do some speculating on what the timing might be and what you should be doing in your different entities and departments to prepare for this. Hi, Nicholas. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Nicholas. Anything else to add?
Thanks, Sean. Just quickly, the thing that concerns me about this is that there's almost an implied assumption that the entire act will be implemented within the first 24 months, because otherwise, what is there to report on? By that point, you would have, for example, implemented Chapter 4. And so, has the damage already been done at that point? Whereas I thought the whole rationale of this clause was that the phase 2 was going to be engaging on the difficult questions they didn't have time to engage with in the first public participation process. That doesn't seem to be the case. So that just concerns me because there's going to be no opportunity for further engagement on the controversial parts of the bill before it's implemented, if I'm right as to how they intend to apply Section 68.
Nicholas, let's play this forward a little bit. So let's assume that this is signed off by the president before the 29th of May. There is then, and let's assume that there can't be piecemeal implementation of this. Let's use that as an assumption right now, and that the regulations would need to be developed. How long will that take? Because I was very interested to see that this was changed from 18 months to 24 months. And I think the reason for that was because it's going to take at least 18 months to get those regulations completed and approved. I can't see it happening, maybe 14 months. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be, I think we're going to see that there might be 6 to 8 months of actual implementation effort attempts before we get to this 24-month period. I don't think it's going to be that long. Nicholas, what do you think? What are your thoughts? How long do you think it'll be?
Well, that's putting aside potential delays as a result of litigation as well. We shouldn't forget that. I mean, that everybody's saying that's going to happen. So why isn't it factored in? It's really hard to say because this process for the public participation on the regulations is now its own thing, guided by this bill. It's its own process. So and a lot is left to the regulations, which means there's a lot to comment on. It's going to take a lot of engagement. Possibly, one could expect maybe even more than was on the bill because of how much they've left to that space. It's really impossible to say. But I think that the trouble for me is that it's at that point difficult to challenge the controversial parts of the bill at that point because the bill's now an act. Now it's at court stage. So it's not like the regulations are going to give us too great an opportunity to engage back on those initial points.
Good. Thanks, Nicholas. I see Jonathan Klaaren. Professor Jonathan Klaaren, welcome. Thanks.
Welcome, Sean. How are
Thank
you?
you.
Thank you.
Very well, and you. Thank you for turning your camera on, because I may have missed you. So just for everybody's benefit, Professor Jonathan Klaaren is Professor of Law and Society at Wits University. And I know that he has been intimately involved in the Public Procurement Bill, including discussions at NEDLAC at some point as well. So, Professor Klaaren, your thoughts on the next steps? What does it mean if this is going to go to the presidency?
Yeah. So thanks, Sean, and thanks. I'm doing office hours here at Wits, so I'm only able to come in for 5 minutes, Sean.
Thank you.
But I thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts, and then, also continued thanks for this platform, which I think is really important as part of the community of practice in this area. So very much appreciated all of that. The thoughts, I guess, that I've had a little bit are this: as as two events have happened since, maybe three, since we last spoke, Sean. One is that, well, the bill is now passed and even closer to assent, right?
Right.
That's one. Second, at this review part just had up section 68 is the third is the recent presidential action on the NHI bill.
NHI.
So the NHI, yeah, National Health Insurance, which obviously is not this bill, but is in some ways, I think, parallel legislation. The other piece of legislation that often, well, that I at least use is the Copyright Amendment Bill, but we don't have to go there for now. So, Sean, you were asking for my thoughts. I think what I've tried to do and think about a little bit is the sequencing of these reviews. So if we call them a presidential review in section 79, that is first, it would appear. And then this review, the one that you just had up, the section 68 review, would appear to be triggered by the conclusion of the section 79 review. And of course, section 79 is meaning 79 of the Constitution there. So that's the sort of first reading. The other part to this is section 80 of the Constitution. And that is the possibility that 1/3 of the parliament can call for a constitutional court review. And that could be, it would appear to be, within 30 days of the conclusion of the presidential assent. And of course, the president can either delay his or her review or do that over a long period of time, or actually even send the bill to the Constitutional Court as part of that. So I think we need to think of these three possibilities of review together. And the first one is clearly the presidential one. And that's why I've raised the NHI, because, well, I mean, I have no insider knowledge, but the reporting in the media is that it's a bit surprising that the president has actually decided to sign. There hasn't been as much consultation on that as there has been, for instance, around the Copyright Amendment Bill. So those are the thoughts, is that, and I just heard your discussion with Nicholas, and I would agree with the tenor of that discussion that because of this, you can call it litigation, but we're at the interface of still lobbying and litigation. We need to think about the sequencing of these reviews, because they are not, I don't think they're going to happen in parallel. They will actually happen in sequence.
Interesting.
Sean, I hope I was helpful with any of that.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor. Do you think that there will be enough time to engage with the president after tomorrow? Or do you think it's going to be a fairly quick process now? He's going to say the next time he has an opportunity, where's the pen? As he did with
That
NHI, because that's the precedent that he set now, right?
Well, I don't have any special insight into
Yeah.
that one, Sean.
I guess I'm asking, is the 29 May an absolute cutoff? If the
Well, that I have
president,
insight to.
yeah,
The 29 May is not an absolute cutoff because the legal effect of moving from one parliament to another, right, which we will do at some point after 29 May. Yes, in one way, 29 May is an absolute cutoff because things end.
Mm,
You know, the parliament, well, actually before the 29th, the parliament,
the
the
last
seventh
sitting,
parliament
yeah.
closes. But it is open to the eighth parliament to reopen the progress of bills where they were
Okay.
at the end of the seventh parliament. And that is often done. In fact, I think it's fair to say usually done. It requires an affirmative act from the eighth parliament to do so, but it can be done.
Right.
So in that
Right.
sense, you can kind of bank the progress. And I'm sure from a number of persons within parliament, perhaps not all, politics is politics, but from a number of persons, the notion would be to say, okay, look, we got this far, let's just keep going from that point.
I don't know what the
Useful.
that
Thank
clear,
you.
Sean?
Thank you. Absolutely. Benjamin, I see you've raised your hand. If I know that Professor Klaaren has got some limited time. Do you want to go ahead, Benjamin?
No, thank you. That's in error. I'm trying to lower it. It's an old hand. Thank you. I just got the call dropped. My apologies. Thank you very much. Nothing to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Jonathan, the process with the presidency, if you've got a few more minutes, the process at the presidency, are there options, or is it just, here it is, decide what you do, sign it or send it back? What are the options that the president will have at that point?
Yeah, sorry, I went through that quickly.
Yeah.
In terms of process, it works around, there are, I guess it's fair to say, informal in the sense of politics, and coordination within government, which is maybe a different form of politics. Works around also submission of formal documents. It is much less scripted and much less formalized than the parliamentary engagement. In terms of options, yeah, there's basically three, which is the president likes the bill. So the first part to start with is that this is a constitutional, quote, veto, not a policy veto.
Right.
However, as most people following the bill will know, it's quite easy to at least arguably, plausibly find areas of overlap of policy and constitutional. Yeah. So there are three options, which is the president assents, says there are no constitutional objections, all good, go forward. Says, hey, I found a constitutional objection, as he did as President Mandela did in the first one of these Section 79 cases with the liquor bill around provincial provinces, the exact line of demarcation between national and provincial, and says, send it back, Parliament, do it again, give me another bill, give me another version. So that's the second option. Yeah, right. And then three, yeah, I think there's a constitutional problem here, and I'm going to send it to the Concord for basically a hearing on it. So 1, 2, 3, those are the options.
Those are the options.
I mean, there's implicitly, yeah, there's really implicitly a fourth option, which is kind of do nothing and keep politicking, keep working. So that's in a way a fourth substantive option, but in terms of options forward, there are three. So Sean, I am actually going to go back. I've got.
Thank you. Thank you.
competition law students here, and they're doing well. But yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity.
Appreciate your input. Thanks very
See you.
much. Thank you, Jonathan. All the best. Thank you. Take care. Let's Michelle, good morning. Any thoughts?
Yeah, sorry. I'd just like to make a couple of points. One, South Africa has a problem of implementation more than legislation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the Public Finance Management Act, which is probably one of the most complex pieces of legislation in the country, together with the Municipal Finance Management Act, there is a very clear provision that suppliers will be paid in 30 days. So any government department, any provincial department does not pay suppliers in 30 days is in fact committing a crime. So effectively, when you look at the application of the Public Finance Management Act, it is actually quite pathetic. Now, here we're making another piece of incredibly complex legislation. And the prospect of actually it being successful are next to zero if one looks at the history of implementation of all other legislation that already exists in South Africa. So that's my first comment. My second comment would be that I don't understand why government persists in creating these incredibly lengthy acts and bills. I'm an engineer. If I look at the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the act is simple. It's very, very simple. There is no controversy about the contents of the act. So the act stays the way it is. The way in which the act is given effect is by a set of regulations, which are far easier to implement, are far easier to update, and are actually what gives the act body. And you can have all sorts of regulations for all sorts of procurement, so that you don't have pencils and power stations being procured by the same set of regulations. You have a different skill set on the people who are involved with the procurement of pencils to those who are involved in the procurement of power stations. When it comes to items of equipment that can only be sourced overseas, you don't have to go through an intermediary in South Africa and pay them extra money, which the taxpayers have to pay, and so on and so forth. So, you know, for me, this is really a very, very poor piece of work.
So, and many have the view. There is a group as well that says, well, this is better than what we had. The triple PFA, for example, was limiting, and this is giving us far more mechanisms than we had before, although there's still some question marks around that and the cost implication issues. But it does give us something to work on, which is better than what we had. This is 35 pages of actual content. If I was to compare this with the Procurement Act that the UK has, it's only half the size. I think the Procurement Act in the UK is about 80 something pages. This is 35, so it may not be in procurement terms. So I hear you, and there are complications in this. I hear you, but it's I don't know. I mean, there's a lot that we could argue to say that there's a lot of content here, which could be in regulations. Others are saying there's a lot of content missing here, which should be at the Act level. One of those is there's no description in the Act on what the methods could be, which is quite unusual. Many acts have descriptions, at least, of some of the methods, procurement methods, but there's nothing here. But we are where we are, right? Unless there's a dramatic turnaround by the ruling party, by the president, this is likely to go forward. And if anything, it does give some level of certainty to the procurement community. That certainty will be Yeah, clarified when the challenges start happening after May, if and and when the regulations start coming out. And or at least when the regulations start to get discussed. So it sounds like from what Nicholas is saying as well is that after this stage, if it is assented by the president, then we will only really get clarity either through a court process or through the regulations or through that next review in 24 months' time. Interesting.
Sorry, may
Go
I
ahead.
just may I give you an example? If you are a bidder on a municipal bid, in terms of regulations, the first challenge for you as the bidder, if you believe you've been unjustly disqualified or a bid hasn't been awarded to you, is to the municipal system in terms of the Municipal Systems Act. So good luck with getting that in 60 days. Then the second option is from the municipality, then you go to the province. Then for the province, you go to the National Treasury, then from the National Treasury, eventually you go to court. So, well, that's how it works now.
Oh, at the moment, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So with the Public Procurement Bill, you will still have to go through the municipality, then you go through the tribunal, then you go to court.
Yes.
By then, the project has probably been built and completed.
Question.
And a court,
yeah.
a court will tell you, sorry, public interest is X, Y, and Z. We hear what you say, but, tough luck. The award was improper, there was malfeasance and so on and so forth, which is something that happens every day, unfortunately, in our country. And you, as an honest bidder, are actually being sidelined and shafted. And you've actually incurred a huge amount of costs in pursuing what should have been rightfully your work, and it actually hasn't been awarded to you. That's where we are. And I mean, the bill just makes things more complicated rather than saying, well, we are going to give you a decision in 15 days. If you're not happy with our decision in 15 days, then you can go and throw your money away in a court. But there is no such commitment. So, you're faced again with an unwieldy state machine.
I'm keen to engage, but I'm going to hold off. I think you've made the point and you've given an example, and I think we're going to need to unpack this as suppliers, as procurement professionals, to understand exactly what this means and how the regulations and that tribunal process is going to actually happen. I'm biting my tongue now. It's an example, and we must certainly start unpacking that and many other examples that are there as well. And thank you. Michaela, or is it Michelle?
It's Michael.
Michael, thank you, Michael. Apologies, sorry. Thank you, Craig. No, actually, before I think there was somebody else. Go ahead, Craig.
It was me, Sean.
Morning. Thanks, Sean. So just going back to Michael's analogy of whether you're procuring pencils or power stations, does this new act not have a completely separate section for the procurement of infrastructure, which then negates that argument about power stations and pencils?
The Act, in my understanding, gives the Public Procurement Office the ability to separate methods, procedures at a commodity level as well. So there are going to be different ways to ensure that that is avoided. I think Yeah, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. I don't think we're going to be using the same process to buy a power station and a pencil.
So my question is, in the Act itself now, as it stands,
Yeah.
I remember some time ago seeing a separate section in the Act that dealt with the procurement of infrastructure.
No longer there.
Oh, so that was then subsequently removed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And any
there was
idea behind the rationale for that?
It was I think the rationale, and that was actually, when did that come out? I think it was in the draft. I didn't think it made it to NCOP. I think it was actually taken out before it got to NCOP, because it was a level of detail that they thought was not needed for the Act. That could come through in the regulations, just as they're going to have a separate set of regulations for public-private partnerships. It could come through as a separate set of regulations for other commodities as well. I think that was the rationale, Craig.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Keep the Act as basic and as simple as possible,
Yeah.
and then rely on the regulations for the detail. But obviously the constitutional issue is that Parliament must make law, not the Minister of Finance.
That's the question. And that's one of the points that has been raised. Yes. Let's just quickly jump to Mlungisi. Hi, Mlungisi.
Hi, Sean. Sorry to take you back. On the discussion with Prof Klaaren, he gave 3 options now that the president has. I just want to pick up on the last option of Section 79, I think 79(4)(b) of the Constitution, wherein the president will then have to refer the bill to the Constitutional Court to decide on its constitutionality. My question is centered around the current administration now. When Parliament rises and maybe the bill is referred to the Constitutional Court, after the 29th of May, doesn't the bill submitted by the current president in the current administration becomes academic and moot in terms of the decision from the Constitutional Court? I just wanted to understand if the Constitutional Court will then have to look at that, or it will just say because it was raised by the previous administration, then the matter has become academic and moot and then struck off the roll. I just wanted to get an understanding on that one. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. I'm not an expert in this. I think that Professor Klaaren said that there is an option that should the bill not be assented by the president, but before the 29th of May, there is an option then for the new parliament to reignite that and to start the process again. I don't think that there would be time, which is why I asked the question. I don't think there would be time for the president to actually exercise the second and third options that were raised by Professor Klaaren. I think he's either going to sign it or he's going to not, because will he have time to then send it back to Parliament? I don't think so. To send it back to Parliament and say there's constitutional issues, just sort them out, or to refer it then to the Constitution. I don't know if there's going to be time to do that. So I think it'll probably be either sign it or hold on and leave it for the next Parliament to decide if they want to take it forward or not. Practically, I think we're running out of time for options 2 and 3. It'll be very interesting to see. I mean, the NHI bill went through very quickly. It went directly from NCOP directly to the president. This has gone NCOP back to National Assembly and then possibly the president. I think it is public knowledge that there's a procurement reform working group that has written to both to Parliament, National Assembly, and NCOP on their concerns about the constitutionality of the bill. From what I recall, I don't think that there is specific reference to what the constitutional issues are in that letter from the working group. So I think it would be either incumbent on that working group to really spell out very clearly what those constitutional issues are, so that when the president does consider it, that he does so in the context of what those constitutional issues are. Because the Parliament has said, NCOP has said there are no constitutional issues as far as they're concerned. So it's going to go from Parliament to the president, and the view that he's going to be fed by Parliament is that there aren't constitutional issues. There were a set of constitutional points that were responded to by the legal person, I forget his name now, who was involved with the NCOP and with National Assembly now on Monday. And he responded to a range of constitutional issues, but they weren't all the constitutional issues. I know that there's one, for example, 216, and the role of 216 was not something that he spoke about. But yet, as you can see, 216 is a very important part of the context in which this bill has been put together, and the role, for example, of the Public Procurement Office. All right, if there are no other points, there we are, Craig.
Yeah, Sean, I just
Go
wanted
ahead,
to ask,
Craig.
would it be possible for one to gain sight of this correspondence between this procurement working group and the responses that were received? Because obviously the constitutional issues are critically important.
I mean, there's nothing confidential about that, and I do have your email address, Craig, so we'll certainly send that through to you.
Thank you.
Both the letter, the response that was received, as well as the working group's correspondence. Yes. Hey, Khomotso.
Good morning, colleagues. Morning, Sean. Sean, I'd like to get back to the issue that was raised by Michelle or Michael, when he
Michael.
was giving a scenario of the process of coming from the bidding process, going to the municipality, going to provincial treasury, and then ultimately going to the court. I'm not sure about the municipal processes, but being from a government point, being from the public service, I can indicate that there's this thing called intention to award that gets advertised, where there are 5 days processes where one can appeal. I think this process can also be advantageous and assist in the delays that might be there for the process to be going on to all those meetings while a new contractor is busy doing work. You understand what I'm saying? No, that was just my 2 cents point.
Good going, Khomotso. I think what we've got to understand, and this is something that we will, as a community, unpack going forward, is what really are the implications of the standstill period. Because I think what I've heard, so it was a very different view from Michael. What I've heard is that there's probably a greater risk of non-delivery given the standstill that is built into the Act as it's seen now, and not cases where it's going to carry on. They're going to carry on building it, and if there is somebody that is not happy with it, that they're going to have to wait for that long process, as Michael says, to unfold before they can actually challenge it. Michael?
Sorry, I just have a different question. The previous round of public consultations, National Treasury admitted that they didn't even look at 2/3 of the comments that were received on the Public Procurement Bill, and which is probably why the implementation was delayed. Is there any indication from National Treasury now that they've actually considered all the comments that they've received and not once again filed in file 13, 2/3 of them.
I think there is still evidence to back up that they've not considered them all. I think what was clear is that they did not respond to them all. That was certainly clear. I think I heard them say they did consider them. They did certainly look at them, but they didn't necessarily respond to them all. But I think in one of the meetings with NCOP, there was a statement made that they did look at them and did consider them in the update. I think the NCOP's processes where they allowed stakeholders to submit a supplementary explaining the points that had still not been effectively dealt with in the bill, I think that probably is going to counter some of the issues, but I don't think all. So, Michael, yes, I think that there was certainly a discussion on Monday on the consultation process, and I think Treasury did give some input on Monday on that, saying they have done as much as they could have. Michael?
Yeah, sorry. For me, that would be a cardinal sin, because I mean, I just look at the precedent that's been set in all the environmental court cases, where licenses were sent back because the consultation was deemed to be inadequate. So, I mean, surely that's the first thing that they would have taken care of, because I mean, that's just, for the naysayer, that's an easy win.
Sure. So there's going to be certainly lots of issues, and the consultation process is going to be one of the points that can be challenged, and will probably have to be challenged legally after May. The general impression and feedback that Parliament are being fed is that the consultation process has been adequate, and this bill is ready to go. But there certainly are, and I think there's lots of points. I think of, for example, the Western Cape's submission into the NCOP process was not responded to by Treasury. A large part of it was not responded to by Treasury, and they had a fairly significant input. So there certainly is evidence to say that if somebody wants to challenge on that basis, to possibly use those points on that. But the feedback that Parliament is getting is that the consultation process has been adequate. Very interesting. We're going to certainly watch very carefully tomorrow. I believe it's going to be considered tomorrow in Parliament, and then we'll certainly know by the end of tomorrow where things stand and what will happen next. So watch the space. I'll try to get a bit of a formal update from Parliament's website, but as far as Parliament's website is concerned, the bill is still sitting at the NCOP and hasn't moved from there. So there's not a lot of updates. The secretary to both committees has been quite responsive and has been sending out updates if requested. The other point of challenge as well is the point that Lindiwe raised earlier, is just around the whole financial implications. The capacity is another one. There's a lot that can be done. But the other way to look at it is to say, we are where we are. We have potentially a bill that will serve as a starting point for the development of regulations, and probably my reading from Treasury is that will be the assumption, and Treasury will continue to build on those, to develop the regulations as they're required, and to start consulting on those after the president has assented to this. So let's see where that goes. Interesting. We're already at 11 o'clock. I thought this might take us about 5 minutes, but it's, someone was asking, because I was posting stuff on Saturday, and was asking why am I? Oh no, Friday evening on a little chat group that we've got. Why is Sean giving us homework for the weekend? Fuck, this is probably the biggest and most significant piece of legislation for the public procurement community that will impact a trillion rand of expenditure, going forward. So it has a massive. This is bigger than NHI. R1 trillion annually of expenditure this bill is going to have an impact on. It has got massive implications for the country and for the public sector going forward. Is there anyone who would like to just make a comment? I see your hand, Craig. Let me ask this question first. Anyone who would like to make a comment on the impact of the fact that the president will sign NHI today and what that impact will be as far as the Public Procurement Bill is concerned? Any comments on that? And while you're thinking about that comment, Craig, go ahead.
So, yeah, thanks, Sean. Just a quick one. Obviously, the previous Constitutional Court challenge to procurement regulation was the AfriForum matter.
Yes.
So could one say now that this new act will have adequately dealt with all the issues that were raised in terms of the Constitutional Court ruling on the AfriForum matter?
To answer the question, will it address all the issues that were raised on the AfriForum matter? My view would be no, because there were some questions which were not answered by the Constitutional Court regarding constitutional matters. Okay, now the key issue with the AfriForum matter was that the regulation went outside the Framework Act. Okay, so the Framework Act did not have in its framework a provision for a mechanism such as pre-qualification and subcontracting. There was no mechanism in that act for that. And on that basis, the Supreme Court of Appeal then agreed that it was neither necessary nor expedient for the Minister of Finance to issue those regulations. The Concourt actually came back and said it was neither necessary nor expedient for the minister to issue those regulations because the Framework Act was sufficient. Now that Framework Act is now going to be done away with. So I don't see any reason in the AfriForum case. I'm speaking now as a layperson. I'm not a legal person. I don't see any reason in the AfriForum case for there to be a challenge to the bill. That AfriForum case was primarily around the Triple PFA, and the Triple PFA will no longer exist once this is done. We're going to need to look very clearly. There are constitutional issues around Section 2172, 2172's relationship to 2171, 216 and its relationship. Those are constitutional issues which weren't they were discussed, but that wasn't where that particular case concluded on. There still is this uncertainty as to what does it mean? What does 2171 mean? Relative to 2172, 2172 says that 2171 does not prevent an organ of state from implementing a policy. And then there's 2172 1 and 2 A and 2172 B, and the reference, the point that A doesn't reference. It talks about categories of preference. It doesn't reference people. That people is referencing. Those issues probably still need to be unpacked at some point in time. But that wasn't as far as the AfriForum case went. It didn't go that far. Anyone else want to help me? Any of the legal people that are online that can maybe add to that? All right, let's quickly just jump to the next section. Hey, Michael.
Yeah. Sorry, one thing that hasn't been decided yet definitively at constitutional court level is whether set-asides are acceptable or not. It's been decided at High Court level, but whether 2171 and 2172 permit the use of set-asides has not been decided, and that will certainly be one of the areas of major challenge, because any legislation that is exclusionary in purpose will always be challenged by somebody who feels excluded.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of those, and that certainly is going to be probably an AfriForum organization or type organization that will certainly challenge that.